So would another thing on bioelectronics, do you think it would put a specific area of the body into sort of like a different wavelength and somehow squeezes out the pain on a cell-to-cell level, sort of like a massage, sort of like a chronic vibrating massage, sort of wear like a patch and then apply it to whatever area that's hurting or whatever you have a chronic pain for?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where like the layperson wants to sort of understand science and wants to appreciate it, and it feels like we can just crack the code using something different and something that's easier to understand. That temptation is huge, but it's just not there. The way pain propagates in the body and how our bodies understand and interpret that pain is complicated, and there's no easy way to sort of explain it, one. There's certainly no easy way to change it, too. And it's important, right? Evolutionarily, we need pain to tell us we're in trouble, and we need that pain to sort of help us. But unfortunately, as we get older, we also have pain in our nerves and other places where we maybe didn't want it. And it's never going to tell us that it's something helpful. And unfortunately, evolution just doesn't have, it only goes in one direction, and doesn't receive feedback other than sort of survival functions. So there's no easy answer on that. And I think that the Vertex drug is, I think, and people have tried to do every type of thing they can with electricity and pain, and it just doesn't seem to work. And I think the major reason there is it's hard to sort of have it's hard to sort of circumvent the general perspective of the nerve sort of being the peripheral sort of sentry for pain, and sort of returning that signal to the brain and then returning some stimulus back. That's sort of the paradigm. It's hard to sort of change that. And again, a couple of med school classes and you'll really understand it. But it's again, the temptation is that what we have now hasn't worked. Let's try a new paradigm, and that's good thinking. That's healthy to think that way. But it's also, and that's where real advances may come. But it's also been a dead end and a tough place to be. So I don't know. We'll see. Somebody asked, "You gonna get married and have kids, Martin?" I think that'd be good. I'm sort of at a crossroads now, where I'd like to get married. I'd like to have children, but I have different reasons for this. So the first reason is I really want to make my parents happy. My parents gave me the great gift of life. They seem to really want grandchildren. We have a family of 4. Not to get too personal. A family of 4 children, including myself. So I have 3 siblings. None of us have had children yet, which is a little statistically unlikely. And I feel like it almost falls on me to do so. I lost 4 years, not of my life, but of some parts of my social life in prison. And so to some extent, I feel like I need to catch up on that. I don't know if that's sort of selfish or not, but even if I started right now, I don't think I can get married and have children for at least sort of 2 years. And that's probably a pretty quick time frame. A lot of people want to feel more comfortable with their partner before they start relationships and so forth. But no, I don't know. We'll see. You can meet your relationship anywhere, right? You can meet your partner standing in line in Starbucks, or at work, or God only knows where, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Online, obviously. So in the metaverse. But I think the most interesting thing is I do think humans will have AGI partners someday, as crazy as that is to say. And again, watching the John Carmack 5-hour interview with Lex Friedman, John is now, I think, giving his full-time attention to AGI, which is pretty scary, because if anybody can kind of get it to work, it's probably going to be him. Taking more of a practical engineer's perspective to create AGI, as opposed to kind of what we're doing now, which is academiaing it to death. If that, I mean, I'm not even sure that's what we're doing.
Have you seen or heard anything new or exciting in the pharmaceutical space in regards to drug and alcohol treatment? And do you ever think there would, even though it's had like a ton of issues, do you ever think there will be like a Chantix type drug for addiction?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in general, my basic answer is I'm not aware of anything that's exciting or interesting, unfortunately. There is a desperate need. my best friend in prison was a drug addict, and he's this I mean, he's basically my age, so I would say he's a kid, but he's not a kid. Maybe a couple of years younger. Who and we just read like science and math and STEM all day. It was a lot of fun because we had kind of a same perspective. I had a little bit more success or whatever education than him, but we had a lot of common interests. So we just read about science and programming, and like he was a literature buff, so we spent some time talking about that too. And in any event, I got to know an addict for the first time in my life up close and personal. And this person was my best friend in prison. And basically, you know, just really trying hard to sort of understand what addiction really looked like up close and personal. And this person would lie to me about their addiction. And I confronted him and I said, you know, why would you lie to me here? Like my best friend in here. And, you know, the reality is, you know, people, you know, you can be embarrassed by the addiction. You can be, you know, stunned by it. And he said, Martin, I really don't understand why I'm an addict. Like, I don't want to be. I just have this, you know, compulsion to do these drugs, and I can't stop. And that's the most horrible thing that's ever happened to me. And it got him in prison for 9 years, even though, you know, he was just a simple drug dealer who was trying to make his own ends meet and get his own supply of drugs. Typically, people who are that addicted will end up selling drugs as well to their friends or whatever. So 9 years in prison was really an insane amount. And I think people with addiction will struggle for their whole lives, right? Like with temptation and with issues like that. And so I still talk to this person, maybe not every day, but quite often. And, you know, really hoping that, you know, the best for them. But it's really fascinating to sort of come up close and personal with it. You hear about addiction, you learn about addiction, but unless you've had a family member or a really close friend, I've had a couple of coworkers who were substance abusers, and I tended to look at them like probably how my other coworkers looked at them, which was like, oh, sucks and we're sorry, but at the end of the day, like you can't work here and, you know, you're not a productive employee, you're probably a liability. We want you to get help, we want you to be better, but just not around us. You know, and I think that's a really cold way to do it. But I mean, how many people could be a C-level person at a top tech company or something and still have a substance abuse problem? I'd say almost never would happen, at least, and be open about it. So really, really painful. But it goes with the rest of psychiatry, where there just isn't much going on with the science of it all to really understand why we get addicted and why all this stuff is happening. There's plenty of research being done, but not translational research, the kind of research we need to, as drug companies, to sort of like put, you know, one foot in front of the other and actually come out with a therapy. A lot of this stuff ends up being kind of the same old, same old. So very, very few companies are trying new things, brand new things in addiction. And what's funny is most people don't think it's a very big market, which is sad because the amount of people dying of addiction is larger than really, quite frankly, almost any other illness. It's now got to be in the top 5 causes of death, which for drug companies traditionally, maybe a little bit of a state secret here, but that is the place you go to make money. You look at the top 10 killers and you say, okay, let's go after this stuff because this is where we can sell the most and make the most money. So in any event, that's kind of the truth of kind of what's happening with some of the biopharma industry.
Yeah, I work in the space and basically what I've been seeing over the past 5 years, a lot of the government funding is going towards medication-assisted treatment, which is fine. But what I've been seeing, what we've been seeing is a lot of people are coming in for treatment for those maintenance drugs. And the traditional one was methadone, but now it's more Suboxone, Subutex. So it's kind of, it's just a weird situation. Like it's basically like a Band-Aid. And
yeah, one of my close friends from prison is actually in the chat right now, and we know. I mean, Suboxone was one of the best-selling narcotics in prison, and it's a drug of abuse as much as it's also a drug of therapy. So it's definitely a pretty wild way to treat somebody.
It's like it's basically caught in between like old school like AA and obviously like one-on-one therapy, group therapy, and then like basically maintenance programs, medication assisted with one-on-one therapy. So it's kind of caught between those two right now. And I mean, you could just look at the numbers. Obviously, it has a lot to do with what's on the street as far as fentanyl, and people aren't really getting what they're looking for. But yeah, overdose rates and deaths are just continuously going up year after year. So it's just kind of a weird spot everybody's in right now.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these psychological disorders or psychiatric disorders or neurological disorders, some part of the problem is that we do build this experience over time that feeds our neural network and creates these sort of weights, as maybe a computer science person would say, what they are in our brains, who knows, but these weights that sort of like define us and who we are, and like reversing those is very, very hard, maybe even impossible, without breaking the kind of rest of the structure of the neural network. And that might be kind of what needs to happen for some of these people, but humans aren't easy to experiment with that way. Like, it's not easy at all. And so I wonder if like some of these things can't be treated, and maybe we'll keep trying, but like some of them are really like, it's much too delicate of a system to go mess with it. It's almost like playing with some of the Windows system files while the operating system is still running. You can't do it without causing a crash in the computer. Probably the brain works a little bit similarly, where like you get exposed to something from an early age and you end up getting addicted to it, and like how do you unravel a lifetime of experience with one pill? It's really not possible. The best we could do is kind of cope and provide some stuff that's sort of a little bit of a band-aid and a little bit of a small help, but searching for that really big disconnect where you sever that like deep addiction with one scissor swipe, and the person's free from that crazy experience. Again, having my friend describe it to me was just unbelievable. Like this weight, that like this big chain around his neck that would pull him everywhere he went. Amazing to watch from my perspective and be around him. And I don't know how I could live like that personally, but just really incredible to watch somebody have like almost a double life, where they're attendant to the life that they care about, but they're also attendant to the life that their addict personality cares about, where they're trying to score all the time and stuff like that. Really, really sad and crazy to see up close and personal. Have you known anybody who's addicted?
Yeah, I'm in recovery myself. I've been clean 10 years, and I work in the space. I own halfway houses. So
oh, that's great.
That's all I deal with, and yeah, it's. I mean, I've seen it, especially over the past 10 years. Since I got clean myself, it's. I've obviously known hundreds of people who have gotten better, and I've probably, not even over exaggerate, obviously a lot of these are acquaintances, just people I've met like in the rooms and stuff, thousands that have died. And yeah, it's just something that comes up like kind of amongst me and my buddies sometimes. Like, you ever think there'll be like some sort of magic pill? And obviously we all come to the conclusion that there probably won't be. But there is at least, up until recently, the only answer really has been this, 100-year-old answer, which is basically go to a 12-step program.
Right.
And basically find some way to have some sort of spiritual experience, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And which has worked for a ton of people, and myself included. But I understand that that's not necessarily quite the answer for everybody. It might not fit everybody. And, so it's always just something I think about and keep an eye on. And basically the only thing I see coming out of the pharmaceutical space is more maintenance drugs. And, I've taken Suboxone myself in the past, and, that it's similarly addictive, and it does it up. I mean, I don't know if anybody here has taken it themselves. You do get high off it, and it's easy to abuse. But it does work for a lot of people as far as a maintenance thing. And to be honest, if it was my buddy or if it was my kid, I'd rather them take this maintenance drug, even though it's not like a great solution, than go out and on the street and end up shooting a bag of fentanyl.
Right.
And that's kind of the situation a lot of opioid addicts are in right now. It's go to 12 steps, take this drug that isn't really going to solve your problem, but will help it a bit, or take your chances on the streets and keep doing what you've been doing.
Right, and that's what happened to my friend, and what led him to doing 9 years in prison. And again, in prison, he was getting high too, so it was just a nonstop, circle show.